So, this morning's session is focusing on how to overcome employer objections or tough responses that an employer might you might encounter when you're job developing and meeting with employers. It really is never easy for job developers and employment specialists to hear an objection or tough question. So we want to make sure that you're prepared in the moment to respond with some positive responses. So we're going to talk about the types of negative objections or tough questions employers may ask job developers. We're also going to identify specific ways to respond to employer objections and tough questions. And then finally,
Wednesday, little boo boo.
oh, if you could
Yeah.
all
Got us in
please
my
just
apartment.
check your,
That's funny.
your, make sure you're on mute. That would be great. So let's get started. We'll have a chance to discuss some challenges and successes you may have all had over the last couple of months, so we can get a chance to use the group here to identify some possible solutions. So when we think about responding to employers, I want you to think about what happens when you're visiting a potential employer as a job developer and things don't go as anticipated. This is when your preparation and planning for an interaction with an employer is crucial. Consider having a conversation with your supervisor or colleagues regarding these situations to get kind of practice and an opportunity to really bolster your confidence when you're responding to employers. Your confidence in responding to tough questions will make all the difference in developing trust with employers, and sometimes that means practicing ahead of time. And again, if I could just ask everyone to check to make sure they're on mute, that would be great. You know, what else happens is when you're not prepared and you don't really know how to respond to a difficult question, or an employer objects to whatever you're suggesting to them, you may end up inadvertently saying too much. Maybe you're working with a job seeker who doesn't want you to disclose any information about their past history or why they're connected with you. And without that preparation, we may be more inclined to disclose certain information that maybe the person did not want you to disclose. So this is important to really have that preparation. So I have a couple of questions here coming up, and this is a key one. It's going to help kind of frame our discussion this morning. What are some employer objections or questions that have stumped you? So think about over the last, couple of months or since you've been in your positions and you're out meeting with employers to develop those relationships in order to identify job opportunities, meet with employers. So what are some questions? You could use the chat or unmute your mic. And if you unmute, I'm going to take a few notes. Let's see. Why can't the client apply to the jobs themselves? Why can't they call us to follow up? Yes, excellent, excellent question. That has stumped me in the past. My past includes job development and working closely with employers in previous positions as an employment consultant, and then more recently working side by side coaching providers to in job development and developing relationships. So yes, that is certainly one that has come up. Not having a client that fits what they're looking for right away. Sometimes the timing is not lining up. Yes. Any other questions or objections or responses from employers that have been kind of tricky for you to respond to? What are the candidates' limitations? Yes, that's certainly one that is sticky and requires some thought. James mentions responses from employers. We have to contact HR and or legal because we already have someone with supported employment. So maybe they're kind of pushing you off, um, and describing that they need to contact others in the organization. Kay mentions not a question or objection per se, but I had a meeting with an employer one time where I asked them what are some of the challenges that they've had hiring, and I got a response I've never gotten before. I'm not going to share that information. Had no clue where to go from there. So that's one of the questions that we want to ask in building that relationship and identifying whether it would be a good job match. And to get a response from an employer that says, I'm not going to share that information, certainly will stump someone. We tried hiring one of those in quotes, and it didn't work out, so we're not interested. Yes. So it sounds like there have been quite a few tough questions or tough responses, or objections that employers throughout your work have provided that have really stumped people. So let's look at how would you respond to these questions. So I'm going to go back to the chat and identify one of the questions here, or a couple of questions. How about the one that was first put in the chat? Why can't the client apply to the job themselves? Why can't they follow up with us? Why can't they call us to follow up? How would you respond? Why can't the client apply to the jobs themselves? Why can't they follow up with us? What would be some positive responses that in the moment you're prepared and ready to say to the employer? You can use the chat or unmute your mic. I'll wait a bit so we can make sure the chat is getting used. And that's one of the questions that we're going to review in a little more detail. Miles mentions, I guess the answer depends on context of the client's barrier. Okay, that's fair. So maybe there's not enough context in this question. Let's see. My client has asked me to provide this service. Maybe redirecting to your role and what you do to support job seekers. Yes, I think both of those responses would be great. Would anyone be willing to unmute their mic and in the moment respond? I can play the role of employer, or we can have another person here on the call play the role of employer and someone practice in the moment responding verbally.
I can do that.
Thank you, Sherry. Do we have someone who would like to be the employer who can just kind of say, why can't the client apply to the job themselves? Why can't they follow up with us? And then have Sherry respond in the moment, just as some practice opportunities, using this call today to not only hear some information, but also practice those responses. Anyone?
I'll do that.
Thank you. Great. And your name?
This is Jason Quinzer with Ability Employment.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much.
Hey there. Of
Hey,
course.
yeah. So if you wanted to kind of just take on the role of the hiring manager and say something along the lines of, why can't the client apply to the job themselves? Why can't they follow up with us?
Sure.
So, Sherry, if you want to just say, introduce yourself, and then we'll let Jason kind of take it from there, and then let's hear your response in the moment.
Like introduce myself professionally or as the
As an employment specialist going out meeting with an employer, Jason's the employer, just
Okay. I apologize because I'm still kind of new to this part.
no,
Um,
no, no, no. Thank you for volunteering. That's fantastic.
okay. So I introduced myself. My name is Sherry Haney from Sherwood Community Services. Um, and I have a client I'd like to introduce, or I'm following up with the application, right? And he's going to ask me,
Yes.
sorry,
Yes.
I'm really
Yeah.
bad at role play.
That's
Um,
okay. I'm so appreciative of you getting in there and doing it. So
okay.
yes, doesn't have to be perfect for this
Okay.
piece.
So I'm just explaining why the client can't call back.
Well, you're going to say, I'm here to follow up on an application
Oh,
that,
mhm.
um, a job seeker I'm working with or a candidate I'm working with recently put in for your organization. They applied online, and then we'll let Jason kind of,
Okay. All
that's
right.
I'll
that
provide
tough
some pushback.
question. Yes, thank you.
Hi. I'm Hi, my name is Sherry and I was Share Community Services and I'm following up on my client's application to the
Hey,
dishwashing
sorry, I couldn't
position.
get back to you right away.
Oh,
Go ahead.
dishwashing position that he applied for online. And I was wondering if you had a few minutes to talk.
Yeah, sure, Sherry. Thanks for following up with us. So I see that the client here is not you. Why are you following up with me and not the client? Can you tell me that?
Sure, it's because the client support needs and communication regarding employment is coordinated through our supported employment agency to ensure the information is clear and the client is fully supported in the whole process.
That's great. So I can ask you questions then on behalf of the client, or how does that work?
Yes, that's what I'm here for, is to make sure that communication is clear and that everybody has a good understanding of the hiring process, what your needs are, and what the client will bring to the table.
Okay.
Great. Thank you
This is
both.
why I'm bad at it.
No, you're not bad at it
No,
at
that was
all.
great.
You right in the moment, what were some key pieces that Sherry noted in her response?
Did a great job of sorry if you can't hear me, but did a great job of demonstrating like what your role is and kind of how you function within that relationship, and also kind of shows like what you can bring to kind of help the employer out. And yeah, that was perfect. Kind of going back to what your role is, what your place is, and helping and supporting your clients. And you know, yeah, I think it's a good response.
Yes, thank you, Miles. I agree. You certainly hit on some really key points, kind of what your role is, why you're there. Um, Someone in the chat's mentioning, I thought the explanation of why Sherry was reaching out, and not the client was really strong. Yes, yeah, great. So why don't we move on? But these are the types of I'd like us to really kind of get into some practicing today. I thank you both for volunteering, and others can think about if they would like to volunteer for um, other responses. So the other question in here was, and maybe a follow-up to what Sherry was talking about while she's there. Someone in the chat mentioned, what's the candidate's limitations? What are the candidate's limitations? How would someone respond to that?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Von
Yes.
Brown, and I am from Northwest Center. Um, so my response to that would be along the lines of I have a few different ideas, but one of them is to say I'm here to discuss their abilities and to find out what your expectations are.
Great. So you are kind of presenting it to the employer that you're there to make a good job match, right? You're there to talk a little bit about what the employer's needs are, what the expectations of the position might be, and then on the other side is to also talk a little bit about that candidate's um, the job seekers, the candidates' experiences and interest. Great. So Vaughn is kind of describing that as this is part of my job. This is part of what I do as an employment consultant, career counselor, however you're describing yourselves to the business community, and just out here kind of introducing myself, getting a sense of what your needs are, what how I might be able to make a good job match. Excellent. So we'll come back to those in just a bit, but let's move on. So the responses that many mentioned in the chat are some common tough employer questions or responses. So I've prepared some, and I've also prepared some responses that we can talk about. So right off the bat, what if the manager says they're not hiring? How might you respond to that? So you go in and you are ready to use your elevator speech if you've been to some previous sessions, or use your introduction, kind of a cold call, if you will, that you're hoping to move into a warm call. How do you respond to the manager says they're not hiring? You walk in and they say, "I'm sorry, Vaughn. I'm sorry, Miles. We're not hiring right now." And remember, if you're using your elevator speech that we've talked about in the past, or you're introducing yourself, you're not introducing yourself or your service solely to find out if the employer is hiring, right? We're doing our introduction to let them know that we're in the community, let the business person know what our role in the community is, that we can help match candidates and applicants to potential jobs that they might have, whether it's now or in the future. Remember, we're never going in asking if they're hiring. Vaughn said, "That's great. When can I check back in the future?" That's certainly a good response as well. You might be able to say something like, explain that you're not there to solicit job leads, but to simply introduce yourself and your services to the employer. You also want to highlight that you're seeking to gain a better understanding of what the employer looks for in candidates. And you may want to, similar to what Sherry did in her role play earlier, that your strength is really to gather this information about the employer's needs so that you can make a good job match. You would welcome the opportunity to meet to further discuss their needs and how you may assist. So remember, this kind of intro, or this kind of first meeting that you're having with someone, is really there to maybe come back, like Vaughn said, have that opportunity to check back in, not necessarily to see if they're hiring, but to maybe have a second meeting to talk more about what your service provides, what your what the candidates who are receiving your services skills and interests might be. Remember, we're trying to meet with employers who match the goals, the interests and preferences of job seekers we're currently working with. So here's another response: ask to stay in touch and keep the relationship open. Absolutely. I usually focus on what I do and just building relationships and getting an idea of what opportunities are available. Yep. Hit the nail on the head. How easy or difficult is in the moment being able to explain this? Would love to have another volunteer if you're comfortable. Use, again, an employer, a business person, hiring manager, and an employment consultant, employment specialist who's going in to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about your services, and you get immediately thrown this question up, we're not hiring. Would someone be willing to role play? Vaughn, you unmuted and you put your camera on. I'm taking that as a yes.
Absolutely.
Great. And Christopher, I saw you unmute as well. So does that mean you're up for playing a role?
Sure,
Or
no
was it an
problem.
accidental unmute?
No, it was kind of intentional.
Okay,
I'm just
perfect. Thank you.
picking a plot out or something.
So who would like to be the hiring manager and who would like to be the employment consultant? Or Vaughn, what is your position in the organization?
I'm actually a job developer. That's my
Job
role.
developer. Great. Okay. So this is right up your alley. So you're the job developer. Christopher, what about your role in the agency?
I am a PNA, soon to be a certified peer counselor specialist
Okay.
through CWCC.
So both of you at some point will be meeting with employers. Vaughn, more likely as the job developer. Christopher, will you, in your role, be out there developing relationships and meeting with employers and developing job opportunities for folks?
The honest answer is there's a high potential soon, because I might be stepping into supportive enrollment. So this is all good practice for me.
Okay,
Either
great.
side, yeah.
Great. So who wants to be the hiring manager? Who wants to take on the role as employment job developer? You all pick.
I'll take the punches, so I'll be the child developer.
Okay, thank you, Vaughn. And then others here on the call we can chime in with some glows and grows, right? Like we can, identify two glows, two things that Vaughn did well, and then if there's something that we can offer some critical feedback, what would be a growth area? If you're fine with that, Vaughn.
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for almost 4 years, and I always look for feedback. So,
Yes, yes. Great. All right. So you're introducing yourself to Christopher. Christopher is the manager. You can just make up whatever business, Christopher, you want to be a manager of, but
Okay.
do it. Great.
okay. Well, good morning. My name is Vaughn Brown, and I represent Northwest Center as a job developer. And I was stopping by your business because I have a few candidates who are interested in working here. And do you have a few moments to chat?
Well, yes, sir. I appreciate you calling Mr. Brown. I'm curious about the couple people that you are interested in my job. I know we solely work with caregiving on all aspects because I know caregiving doesn't stop, and I know we need every person we can get.
Well, that is excellent. It so happens that I used to work in the caregiving business myself as a case manager, so I can appreciate the challenges that you're facing with your organization. I
Mhm.
just want to let you know that we are not a staffing agency. We do provide free services to help both employers and our clients connect with job opportunities. So I just wanted to clear the smoke on that.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. I
The
appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, sure. So my one of my candidates has a year of working in caregiving,
Okay.
and she is actually looking for part-time, and I don't know if you are looking for that at the moment.
Well, I know we kind of have most of our spots filled up, and there might be something available maybe in the next month. As far as like a part-time weekend job, we could probably do something like Monday through, or no, not Monday through Friday, but Friday through Monday, if that helps. I just know we're kind of packed, like I said. But yeah.
Well, that's great. And I understand that weekends are very difficult to fill. So I appreciate you telling me that. Um, I'm looking at my calendar. Would it say April 15th work for you to check back in, or do you have a better date?
Let's go ahead and do actually the 16th. I think I have an appointment set up with one of the clients needing to meet with their doctors and stuff. But that, yeah, I would be more than happy to meet the wonderful lady that is interested in the caregiving position.
Well, and excellent. I will put this on the 16th and I will give you a call back tomorrow after I speak to my client about that date working out. And by the way, what was the name? I did not catch it.
Oh, my name, Mr. Lee Thomas.
Excellent, Lee. Thank you so much for your time and have a pleasant rest of your day.
Thank you as well. I appreciate you providing someone that's interested in the job, but most importantly, you have a wonderful day. And I do look forward to meeting the lovely lady.
Excellent. Take care.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Excellent. So as as a group, what were two glows, two things Vaughn did well in this exchange? Debbie mentions good way to mention that a service does not have a fee attached. Absolutely. I also liked, Vaughn, how you said we're here for the employers and job candidates, job seekers, clients, I think you mentioned. An area that sometimes we all sort of slip into is using maybe our jargon, and using the term client might be more aligned with the service that you provide. I mean, I guess it could be an an employment agency as well, but oftentimes using terms that are business-like, candidate, I have an applicant, might just, the business person kind of sees you as another business. I mean, that's certainly not a deal breaker, but just the one grow I might mention. Great. So here's some options for this tough question. We've all gotten this one. Oh, let's see. We have another. Yes, Vaughn said, I find myself switching from job seeker, candidate, client. Yes, and I think all of those, I think absolutely all could fit. We want to stay away from, more terms that certainly not patient, certainly not consumer. That might be a little confusing for a business person, but I think you're right on track there, Vaughn. What about the hiring manager tells you the applicant needs to apply online? This is something that I know I've encountered in more recent years when I've been coaching job developers in the community. How might you respond to this kind of toughie?
Um, I would appreciate the alternate route they would be providing for me because sometimes most companies really like the reputation, if I said that right, of like applying on all routes and then checking back up on them like once a week or something like that, because it
Mhm.
shows that you're really interested in the job. And if they provide you like a task, like applying online, it shows that you can basically follow rules according to whatever they're interested in.
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. We certainly want the job seeker to follow those guidelines that the hiring manager or the company has in place. Are there times that are somewhat concerning when someone applies online? Like what would be some of the challenges to job seekers you might be working with and applying online? What are some
I think that,
factors to consider? Miles?
yeah, I mean, outside of the, any barriers that the job seeker might have themselves, like in terms of like accessing to computer, using, computer literacy, all of those type of things. I think it's definitely when asking this question or addressing this challenge, like, kind of gets you trying to get some more insight on what their hiring process is, like, who reviews the applications when they come in, and then seeing if there's a window or opportunity maybe to, you know, talk to the hiring manager when they see your job seeker's information, and then maybe see like, hey, is this a good candidate? Like, what do you think? Is there any feedback? Because all those things can also help you figure out what's holding your client back, and then maybe figure out some ways to help them out for the next opportunity if this one doesn't work out.
Yeah, excellent. Kate, thank you, Miles. Excellent response. Kay mentioned ATS filtering out candidates because they don't hit certain keywords or stuff that they're programmed to look for, job gaps and stuff like that. Yes, those job gaps are, again, that filtering software will unfortunately filter out many job seekers, candidates who might have those gaps. Vaughn said, I asked for the best website to use, Indeed, Glassdoor, original employer website, then asked to follow up on the application. I always support clients with the online applications due to having no access to technology, etc. Then there is a lovely AI screening to bypass. This is when the follow-up absolutely counts. Yes. So that follow-up is so important. And I have kind of a prepared response here. You might say something like, I'm concerned that the job candidate might not have enough work experience to have the application actually get to you. You may miss seeing this application. As we've been discussing, I work with job seekers to make sure that they'll be a good fit for the position. This person not only has the interest in working here, but we've reviewed the job duties and feel that they can do the job despite not having maybe some recent work history. I'm also available to provide any training support. So you could say something along those lines, but again, it takes some practice, but kind of touches on what many of you just responded and described here in the chat. James mentions, I ask if there are openings at several locations. What is the store number location? Yes, I love that. Always leave with maybe some additional contact information. If you're, meeting with someone and maybe, they're not hiring or whatever the discussion leads to, but that particular store, maybe say, oh, we live within a certain mile radius. Are there other Home Depots or whatever the store might be that you have that the manager? May I have their contact information? You're constantly building that network of contacts and potential businesses. So let's look at this one. So you go in and you want to talk to the hiring manager. You've done your research, you've looked online, you know who the hiring manager is, so you're able to ask for them by name. Maybe you peeked on LinkedIn, maybe you're connected with this company on LinkedIn, so you have a good sense of who that manager is, and you're in the area and you certainly could call, but thought, in this instance, maybe it's an employer or business that would, walking in wouldn't be such an egregious thing. So the receptionist says, oh, the manager's not available. Do we just use that as, okay, well, thank you? Or what might you say to, again, keep this contact viable, keep this relationship developed and continue to build the relationship with that particular company? Maybe Kate mentions, I ask when they might be available and what's their name and contact information. Yes, I have something similar here. Thank the person, ask if you could have the name of the person and contact information for the hiring manager. Also, remember to get the name of the person you're speaking with so that you can refer to them when you're reaching out to the hiring manager. You can say, I spoke with Jess, and they were very kind and provided me your contact information and suggested that I call and follow up with you at a later date. Okay, so here's the one that we talked about a little bit earlier. Um, the hiring manager asks why you're there instead of the job seeker. So as we recall from the earlier role play, um, there might be some options that we can use. We had discussed, let's see here in the chat. My client asked me to provide this service, maybe redirecting to your role and what you do to support the job seeker, the client's need for support, someone mentioned. Sherry's response when we were doing the role play kind of nailed that too. Any other thoughts on what you might say? Why are you here instead of the job seeker? I think this might be kind of the biggest question that stumps many of us when we're out job developing.
I've said in the past that I'm hoping to make sure it's going to be a good fit before subjecting the candidate to potential denial or anything like that, but also that I'm not just working with one person. So if there are future roles that I have people that fit, it's good for me to have a hands-on idea of what they're looking for and what they're hoping for.
Yes. Kathy, was that you that said it? Who just responded?
Mindy.
Mindy?
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Have you had success with that, Lindy or Mindy, or what type of success?
It really, you can tell from the start when you're talking to someone how much time they want to give you, but sometimes you can turn it into a better relationship. So my initial meetings are more about getting to know them and
Hmm.
their perception of their role and what they need,
Yes.
and finding ways to make them feel like it's building a relationship between them and I, but also building the idea that I can facilitate um, easier employment prospects because it does cost a lot to look for and hire new people.
Yes. Absolutely. Emphasizing that you're there to really better understand that employer's needs, right? You're there as a partner here in the community, and part of what you do is to help the business community kind of identify potential candidates, saving them money, saving them time in the recruitment process. Yes. Here in the chat, I'm here as a support person to help the job seeker with the employment process. I'm here to learn more about your business to see if it's a good fit. Absolutely.
This is Vaughn here from Spokane. The other thing I have found useful is if you are comfortable with the industry. For example, I refer to my experience as a case manager or case manager assistant in the past with the caregiving business. So that just made it easier to have that conversation about, I do understand filling your weekend roles for your clients as a care provider is difficult. If you had managed a business in the past or were a manager or ran your own self-proprietor business, you can speak to, yes, I know it's difficult to make sure you have the right candidates in terms of cost. So, I have found that play into your knowledge as well if you have experience in a particular industry.
I love that. Yes. If you have that experience, use that to your advantage, kind of make, these are all suggested responses, but of course, personalize them to your own personal characteristics and experiences. I love that idea, Vaughn, of, if you have experience in a certain industry, using that and kind of empathizing with the hiring manager, on what some of their challenges might be and how you might be able to address those challenges. So, just like others have said here, state that part of your job duties include meeting with local employers to get an idea of what they look for in job candidates so you can make a good match. What else? We talked about what else you might say. I love the idea of using some past experiences as a way to springboard into kind of recognizing and acknowledging some of those challenges that industry might have with finding candidates. What about this? We provided Vaughn with a glow that he did mention that there's no fee, and that certainly is an advantage for um, your service over many others. But what could be some of the concerns to an employer or business person when you say there's no fee? What are some things that they might be thinking of that we want to, in the moment, be able to respond accordingly and positively? And also mention in the chat or unmute your mic, has a hiring manager ever asked you this? Okay, Kay, I haven't been asked this one yet. Let's see. James mentions, I'm an employee of X and support the individual with employment services. Yeah, kind of short and sweet. Um, any other responses?
I don't think it would be bad to explain that it's a Medicaid covered service for low-income individuals that qualify.
You could potentially say that. And, certainly you would want to make sure that the job seeker you're working with is comfortable and kind of gives support to however you're introducing them. So there might be some discussion ahead of time with the job seeker regarding their preference on how they want you to represent them. But yes, absolutely. Vaughn said, I like the idea as being a resource to the employer to streamline candidates. If you have a caseload and you have a team with multiple candidates interested in similar roles or interested in the business, yes. Similar to what Mindy mentioned, you could say something like you work under a grant, if that's accurate. Um, the fee is paid by the individuals that you're working with, which would be accurate if it's a Medicaid fee funded service. Um, Another response might be to say that, it's paid for by the supply side, the job seeker side of services, um, which is certainly accurate. So, but being prepared if an employer does or a business does ask you that is really, again, one of these questions that, in my experience, has stumped me and stumped job developers I've worked with. Our program is funded by multiple sources to help connect qualified candidates with local employers at no cost. I love that, Sherry. That's a wonderful kind of short and sweet, but really suggests that, the business person, the hiring manager has no reason to worry that they're going to be hit with any unexpected cost. And you're also kind of, suggesting multiple sources and um, kind of to, again, maybe make the employer feel confident that they're not going to accrue any additional fees. So here's one. What if you go in and you're out in the community and you're thinking, oh, let me just go in and introduce myself, see if I can get the name of the hiring manager, see if I can kind of make this cold call into a warm call, maybe get some contact information so that I can follow up in the future, but I'll have, who I need to talk to and what their role is and get their email or phone number. But what if they ignore you? What if you're standing there and the receptionist ignores you?
It's a lot harder for people to ignore you when you engage them in conversation. So just approaching them and saying, like, if they look busy, just saying, you look busy. Do you have a business card for the hiring manager?
Yes, absolutely. Any other? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm chuckling a little bit because I am visually impaired and I use a service dog as a guide dog. And so a lot of people are, they just offer help. So I have that slight advantage of them approaching me and practicing customer service, say, do you need assistance? And then that's when I grab onto the opportunity to introduce myself and ask for a manager. But there has been times when I walked into a business and I have been ignored. And so what I usually do is just turn around, head back, and put in my calendar to come back. In the restaurant business, for example, okay, it's lunch hour, come back maybe at 10 between morning and mid-afternoon rush. So just making those minor adjustments and coming back can be helpful.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I love that idea of, using the opportunity that they're helping and assisting you to kind of strike up the conversation. And, that could be any person, job developer who goes in that might be, oh, I'm not sure if this is the right place. We're introducing ourselves to different businesses in the area. Can you help me, identify the name of the person? But yes, I think, if they just flat out ignore you, just like others have said, thank the person, say, it looks like you might be busy. I'll return when they're less busy. When might be a good time to come back? Like Vaughn said, if it's in the restaurant business, obviously during the high food, dinner and lunch times aren't necessarily good. Remember, they're the gatekeeper and most likely will inform the manager of the impression you made with them. So, be considerate of their time, etc. So what about this? What if the employer says, maybe someone in the chat mentioned this earlier, I think they might have, we've had not great experience with similar agencies. What if you're hit with that objection or hit with that response? What might you say? You're introducing yourself, you're kind of beginning to describe your service and what you do, what your role is, and the employer stops you and says, we've had not great experiences with similar agencies. Has that happened? And how might you respond?
I can,
Yes, Sherry.
I actually get this one quite a bit for some reason.
Okay.
Um, I usually just kind of thank them for sharing that with me, um, and let them know, that I understand and past experiences can be challenging, but that our program focus on both the employer and the employee, and we provide the hands-on support for ongoing communication, and we're here to help ensure success. Kind of just reassure them, a little hand holding, that we're all not the same.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you, Sherry. Anyone else? So, similar to what Sherry said, acknowledge the bad experience, use your good active listening skills, right? Emphasize that you try to provide the best candidates that have the skills and interests for the job, but acknowledging that the experience happened, I think, is key. You recognize that not all job candidates will work out and that the employer's bad experience with one service or provider does not generalize to all similar services. Let's see, we have some here in the chat. April mentions, I understand that And I appreciate your honesty. Our goal is to make things easier for employers by supporting the employee and being available if any concerns come up. Yes, kind of recognizing that you're the distinction maybe of your service, which in April's case is, we try to make things easier for employers. We support employees and we're available with challenges as they come up. Mindy mentions, let me know what went wrong. I can improve on that. Also, are you aware of bonds for second chance employees to provide employer protection? So providing some education around some of the incentives that might be available. Vaughn mentions, I gently push to ask if they have experience hiring high school or college students in the past. If they say yes, then I politely point out that not all young folks are needing chances and that I'm hoping that they are open to reconsidering their stance. And like Sherry mentioned, be understanding of their past experiences. Yes. So, again, use it as an opportunity to really hear and let the employer know that you're listening and that your intent is to really get a better understanding and want to know uh, what are some of those problems and challenges they may have had so that, like your responses suggested, you can address. So as we kind of move into our the final few minutes here, I did gather these tough questions on like a couple of different slides and a little table that you could print out, put them on your desk, or somehow just sort of have them in an organized way. We typically talk about some of the challenges and other. I'm going to put in the chat here again the PDF of today's session, so you have that. We typically talk about any challenges or successes and get some advice and solutions from the group more generally, and it helps me prepare for future sessions. These are monthly learning communities, and as such, we are learning from one another. And as you all saw, we're all kind of chiming in and as a group providing that feedback and suggestions and some solutions. So more generally, are there challenges or successes that you would like to share to get some further training on, or even we have a minute or two here today to, if there's something that's kind of beyond just what we talked about with those challenges responding to employers, are there any other general challenges or even successes that you want to share with the group? Wait a bit to let you think about that. Okay, I have a member who I've been working with for a while, get enrolled in school and is set to start in the spring. Yes, that is so awesome. So, someone starting school in the spring, that's exciting, fantastic, great success to share. I'm going to put my email in the chat. So please, if you leave here today and you think, oh, I really would love a training on this topic, or I wanted to talk about this challenge and I didn't get a chance to, um, you can send me an email and we can queue it up for next time, and have an opportunity to chat. But I think since we are, yes, Vaughn,
Sorry, this is on. Yes. So,
yes.
one of the challenges I find with clients, we focus a lot on employers today, which is fabulous, and
Hmm.
thank you all for sharing your ideas. Um, what I find is that clients will say, "Oh, I don't have a bachelor's degree, or I don't have an associate's degree." And we see that a lot in applications, especially where one is typically required.
Hmm.
I tend to point to their lived experience. Do you have, for example, peer counseling? They might say, I don't have a certification, or maybe I don't have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I like to point to the lived experience and say, you had addiction in the past, you overcame it, you have a passion to help others. Let's find a way to dig you into a door and possibly an entry-level job so that you can explore the opportunity of becoming more educated in the field. I know I've used that to my own advantage as a person with disabilities applying to social services, where I say, um, is in my experience, our customers find it more relatable if they have somebody who's in the same community as themselves.
Thank you, Vaughn. I was taking notes because I think that sounds like a great future topic, assisting and supporting job seekers in identifying a career ladder where they currently are. And how to describe the skills that they have. How can we support job seekers in describing their skills to an employer, and how can we kind of help in that career advancement? Absolutely. Great. So just to summarize, we had a lot of robust discussion on some of those challenges and those tough questions, and you all were excellent role players. Thank you so much for doing that. Um, Again, not a whole lot of time for Q&A, but if you have any questions or comments, now's the time. I'm also going to put up the survey. If you could kindly complete that survey, that would be great. I will also put it in the chat, but I'm going to have to stop sharing for just a bit. Let's see. So if you want to take a picture of the survey, that would be wonderful. There is a spot on the survey to identify future training topics that you would be interested in. Again, these are monthly calls. May and June will be focused on understanding Social Security benefits. So May will be SSI and looking at some of the work incentives related to SSI, and then Social Security disability insurance will be in June. Next month, we're going to talk about writing effective career goals. So I hope you all come back, and I will email the material. Vaughn, yes, if you would like to have me email you the presentation. I already put it in the chat, but please email me at dolcejn@shp.rutgers.edu, or please put your email in the chat so I have that. And I'm also going to put the survey link in the chat as well. Thank you, and see you next month, hopefully.
Thanks so much.